Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling the controversy surrounding Andrew Tate's recent arrival in Florida. You guys sent us a very interesting source, a clip from Candace Owens YouTube channel, where she interviews Tate about this whole situation.
Yeah, it is fascinating that we're getting Tate's perspective firsthand, along with Owen's commentary. It gives us a glimpse into their narrative and their interpretation of what happened.
Definitely. So to quickly recap for anyone who needs it, Andrew Tate is a controversial internet personality who gained notoriety for his outspoken views on masculinity, wealth, and success. He was recently detained in Romania as part of an investigation into human trafficking and organized crime, but he has not been convicted of any crimes there.
That's an important point to remember as we unpack what happened when he arrived in Florida.
Absolutely. So Tate lands in Florida and boom, he's met with an unexpected hurdle. He claims state police seized his electronics right there at the airport, citing an open investigation.
Hmm. This immediate action does raise questions about the basis of the investigation and whether due process was properly followed. Was there sufficient evidence to warrant such a move upon his arrival? It's crucial to understand the specific elements of due process, which essentially guarantees fair treatment throughout legal proceedings. This includes the right to be informed of the charges against you, the right to legal counsel, and the right to a fair and impartial hearing.
It's like he walked off the plane and right into a legal whirlwind. And it didn't stop there shortly after his arrival. Florida Attorney General James Uthman announced a preliminary inquiry into both Andrew and his brother Tristan Tate.
Right, and that inquiry quickly escalated within days. Uthman announced an active criminal investigation directing the Office of Statewide Prosecution to execute search warrants and issue subpoenas. That rapid progression is certainly noteworthy.
What could explain this sudden acceleration? Does this timeline align with typical legal procedures?
It's hard to say without more information about the specifics of the case. However, it's worth noting that prosecutors generally need to have a certain level of evidence before they can move forward with an investigation and obtain warrants.
Now here's where things get really interesting. Tate isn't simply accepting this situation passively. He's come out swinging, claiming the whole investigation is politically motivated.
Whoa, that's a serious accusation. He alleges that the DeSantis administration is worried he'll support DeSantis's potential political rival, Byron Donalds. He even suggests that DeSantis is being influenced by neoconservatives who disapprove of Tate's pro-Palestine stance.
For those who might not be familiar with the term neoconservatives, generally advocate for a strong military presence abroad and often support interventionist foreign policies.
Exactly. They've been a significant force in American politics, particularly within the Republican Party, for several decades now. Tate's allegation is essentially that law enforcement is being weaponized for political purposes.
That would be a huge deal, if true. It raises concerns about the integrity of the legal system and the potential for abuse of power.
Indeed, the concept of political motivation implies that legal actions are being taken not for legitimate law enforcement purposes, but rather to advance a political agenda or target individuals based on their political views, if that's the case. It undermines the principles of fairness and impartiality that are essential to a functioning democracy.
And Candace Owens echoes Tate's concerns, arguing that conservative circles turned on Tate because of his pro-Palestine views. She criticizes what she calls the neoconservative movement, saying they resort to censorship and attacks because they're losing influence.
Her perspective adds another layer to this story. It highlights potential polarization within the conservative movement itself and raises questions about the limits of acceptable discourse, even within groups that claim to champion free speech.
It's like there's a battle for the soul of conservatism playing out with different factions, vying for control of the narrative.
And Tate finds himself right in the middle of this ideological tug-of-war. It'll be interesting to see how this dynamic plays out as the case unfolds. Yeah, it's a high-stakes situation, that's for sure. And it's important to note that Tate is maintaining his innocence throughout all of this. Both he and Owens emphasize that he hasn't been convicted of any crimes in Romania despite the ongoing investigation there.
They also really criticize people who have formed strong opinions about the case without actually diving into the details of the Romanian investigation.
Right, that's a point worth considering. We live in an age of instant opinions and viral judgments where information or misinformation spreads rapidly online. It can be challenging to sift through the noise and get to the truth, and it's easy to form opinions based on incomplete or biased information.
They're basically arguing for due process and cautioning against a rush to judgment.
Exactly. The presumption of innocence is a cornerstone of our legal system. Everyone deserves a fair trial and a chance to present their defense before being condemned in the court of public opinion.
Now, Tate doesn't shy away from comparing his experiences in Romania with what's happening now in Florida. He paints a picture of Romania as a corrupt system where his rights were violated, and he expresses concern that he's facing similar challenges in America.
That comparison is interesting. He's suggesting that America, a country often seen as a beacon of freedom and justice, might be falling short of its own ideals. This narrative resonates with the certain distrust of institutions that exists in some segments of society.
And he doesn't stop there. He levels some pretty harsh criticisms at what he calls the neoconservative establishment. He even brings up Jeffrey Epstein, highlighting the perceived double standard in how Epstein was treated compared to him.
Oh, those are bold and provocative statements by invoking Epstein, who is accused of heinous crimes but died before facing trial. Tate is attempting to draw parallels and fuel the perception that he's being unfairly targeted, while others with more serious allegations have been treated differently.
He's tapping into a sense of outrage and frustration that exists among those who believe that the system's rigged against them.
Right, it's a tactic that can be quite effective in mobilizing support and generating sympathy, especially among those who already share his distrust of the establishment.
And one particular aspect of this story that I find really compelling is how both Tate and Owens emphasize that the backlash against him from within conservative circles intensified after he made pro-Palestine comments. Owens even claims that the neoconservative movement is attacking Tate because they're losing influence and can no longer win in what she calls the free market of ideas.
That's a significant claim. It suggests that there are certain topics like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that have become so politically charged that even expressing a dissenting view can lead to ostracization or accusations of disloyalty.
Yeah, it raises questions about the limits of acceptable discourse within certain ideological groups.
Indeed, is there a point where dissenting views are no longer tolerated, even within groups that claim to value free speech? It's a question worth pondering as it touches upon the very nature of open debate and intellectual diversity.
In this interview, Tate doesn't hesitate to point out what he sees as hypocrisy in the situation. He brings up Florida's history with serious crimes, referencing Epstein's activities in the state, and questions why he's being investigated, while others, in his view, have gotten away with worse.
He's trying to turn the tables, portraying himself as a victim of overzealous prosecution while implying that others have escaped scrutiny for more serious offenses.
And he does it with a mix of defiance and dark humor. There's a moment where he almost jokes about being willing to face arrest, as if daring the authorities to come after him.
That's a risky strategy, but it plays into his persona as someone who's unafraid to challenge authority and speak his mind, even if it means provoking those in power.
He seems to be betting on the idea that the authorities won't find anything to incriminate him.
It's a gamble for sure. He's putting his faith in the strength of his own innocence and the perceived weakness of the case against him. Time will tell whether that gamble pays off.
Throughout the interview, he repeatedly expresses a desire for a fair trial, emphasizing that he just wants the same treatment any other citizen would receive.
That's a powerful appeal to our sense of justice and fairness. Everyone, regardless of their background or beliefs, deserves to be treated equally under the law.
It's a reminder that due process is a fundamental right, not a privilege reserved for the popular or the well-connected.
Exactly. It's a principle that protects us all from arbitrary or unjust treatment by the government.
And one thing that really struck me is Tate's defiant stance. He's not backing down at all.
Yeah, he's made it very clear that he has no intention of leaving Florida, despite feeling unwelcome and targeted,
He even says that leaving would make him look guilty.
Yeah.
So he's staying put and seems ready to fight this head on.
It's a bold strategy that definitely keeps him in the spotlight and allows him to control the narrative to some extent. He's essentially challenging the authorities to produce evidence of wrongdoing, confident that they won't find anything.
He's basically framed this whole situation as a battle against corruption and, a defense of individual rights. He even urges his supporters to stand up for due process and resist what he sees as an erosion of freedoms.
It's a message that resonates with a segment of the population that feels distrustful of institutions and wary of government overreach. This case taps into broader anxieties about power surveillance and the potential for the legal system to be used against individuals.
Throughout the interview, both Tate and Owens express frustration with what they see as a rush to judgment and a lack of due process.
Yeah, they argue that public opinion has already condemned Tate, even though he hasn't been convicted of any crimes in either Romania or Florida. They point to the speed with which accusations spread online and the difficulty of challenging those narratives once they take hold.
They're highlighting the potential for social media to amplify misinformation and create a climate where accusations can quickly turn into convictions in the court of public opinion.
It's a valid concern. The digital age has brought about new challenges to the concept of due process. Information or misinformation can spread virally, shaping public perception before all the facts are known or before an individual has had a chance to present their defense.
So Tate and Owens are essentially arguing that in the digital age, the presumption of innocence is under threat.
Yeah, they're advocating for a more cautious approach, urging people to withhold judgment until all the evidence is presented and all sides of the story have been heard.
It's a reminder that due process is not just a legal principle, but a societal value.
Oh.
It's about ensuring fairness and protecting individuals from arbitrary or unjust treatment, regardless of their popularity or the nature of the accusations against them.
This case raises a lot of important questions about the balance between individual rights and the need to investigate serious allegations. It forces us to consider how we navigate due process in a digital age where information spreads rapidly and public opinion can be easily swayed.
So we've delved into Andrew Tate's perspective on the events surrounding his arrival in Florida. We've explored his accusations of political motivation, his concerns about due process, and his defiance in the face of these challenges. We've also considered Candace Owens's analysis of the situation and the broader context of this case.
This deep dive has uncovered a complex web of accusations, political maneuvering, and ideological clashes. It's a story that touches upon fundamental questions about power, justice, and the limits of acceptable discourse in a polarized society.
What does this situation tell us about the relationship between political power, public opinion, and individual rights in today's America? Is Tate a victim of a political witch hunt, as he claims? Or are there legitimate concerns about his conduct that warrant investigation?
Those are questions that each of us must grapple with as we follow this case and as we consider the broader implications for our society. It's a story that's far from over, and it will continue to generate debate and scrutiny as it unfolds.
Well, this deep dive has hopefully provided you with a more nuanced understanding of the complexities of this case. We encourage you to continue exploring this topic, seeking out diverse perspectives, and critically evaluating the information you encounter. Remember, it's crucial to approach these issues with a commitment to fairness, due process, and a willingness to consider all sides of the story.
In a world awash in information and often driven by quick judgments, it's more important than ever to engage in thoughtful analysis and reasoned debate. This case is a reminder that the pursuit of justice requires both vigilance and a commitment to the principles that safeguard our individual rights and the integrity of our legal system.